When my daughter-in-law told me that I was no longer needed, I smiled instead of crying. I did not know why I smiled. Maybe it was a habit I learned over the years. Smile when something hurts, so no one sees a crack inside you. Or maybe I smiled because a part of me had always known that this moment would come in some form, someday. Still, hearing those words spoken aloud, so gently, yet so firmly, felt like someone slowly sliding a door shut while I was still standing in the doorway. It happened on a quiet afternoon. The sun was warm, and the house smelled of the lentils I had cooked that morning. Everything was peaceful, simple. I was wiping the kitchen counter, hearing the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of children playing outside. That was when she walked in, her footsteps light, her face calm. She looked at me as if she had rehearsed her expression in the mirror. Not angry, not emotional, just prepared. "Ami, we can manage things now. You should rest more. You've done enough." Those were her words. They were not cruel words. She did not raise her voice. She did not throw anything or blame me. She said in the way a person might say, "The food is ready," or "I folded the laundry." Soft, ordinary, but the meaning was heavy. I remember standing with the damp cloth in my hand, the light coming in from the kitchen window, making a warm pattern on the floor. In that moment, I felt small, not because she had insulted me, but because I realized something quietly. The world I had built, the family I had held together for so long, was gently moving forward without needing my hands to guide it. I nodded. I said, "Yes, Beta, of course." And I smiled, but inside, something shifted. If you had asked me 10 years ago whether I would ever feel like a guest in my own son's house, I would have laughed. I would have said, "My son? Never. He will always need me. He will always understand my heart." But life has a way of surprising us. Not always with big storms or dramatic fights, but sometimes with a single sentence spoken on a quiet afternoon. When she left the kitchen, I stood alone for a moment. The clock ticked loudly, as if reminding me that time was moving, with or without me. I looked around the kitchen. I had cleaned every day. I thought of the meals I had cooked, the nights I stayed awake with her first baby, the mornings I packed lunch for my son before work. All those years felt like a warm blanket I wrapped around the family. But now, that blanket was being gently folded and placed aside. After wiping the last of the counter, I walked to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself breathe slowly. Not cry, just breathe. Because that is something mothers learn to do. We hold our emotions the way we hold children when they're small. Close to the chest, quietly, carefully. You might think that her words alone were the whole pain. But it was not just that. It was everything behind those words. The small changes over months. The slow shifting of roles. The silent understanding that I had become less needed. Maybe less important. Maybe even a burden in ways no one wanted to say aloud. I had been living with them for almost 6 years. After my husband passed away, my son took me in without hesitation. "You will stay with me, Ma," he had said. "You are not going anywhere." And I believed him. I did not move into his house because I was helpless. I moved him because he asked me to, because he said he wanted me there. His words had been warm then, full of love and concern. But life changes. People change. Circumstances change. My daughter-in-law, Aisha, had always been polite, respectful, kind in her own way. She did things quietly, efficiently. I had no big complaints about her. She was a good mother to my grandchildren and a good wife to my son. But there was always a distance, something gentle and soft but present, like a thin curtain between us. You can see through it, but you cannot step through it. I tried many times to build a closer bond with her. I helped her cook. I folded clothes. I swept floors. I stayed up with her when the baby had a fever. I told her again and again, "I am here for you." She would smile and say, "Thank you, Ami." And that was it. No deeper conversation. No shared laughter that echoed through the house. Nothing that made us feel like a team. Still, we lived peacefully. I never tried to take control of anything. I did not tell her how to run her house. I did not interfere in her marriage. I simply helped. That was my role, or at least the role I had given myself. But slowly, I began to notice small things. She would redo the chores I had already done. She would move the spices back to the arrangement she preferred after I cooked. She would insist on making decisions alone, even when I was present. And sometimes she would look at me with an expression I could not quite understand. Polite but guarded. At first, I thought it was just her nature. Some daughters-in-law are more private, I told myself. Some women prefer their space. It is normal. Do not take it personally. But as months turned into years, the distance did not get smaller. It grew, not in big leaps, but in quiet steps. I noticed my son talking to her, in whispers sometimes, their voices soft, their shoulders close. When I walked into the room, they would look up and smile, but the conversation would end. I never asked what they were discussing. It wasn't my place. But a part of me wondered whether those whispers had something to do with me. Then there were the decisions. Small household decisions that I used to be part of, like where we would keep extra dishes, which vegetables to buy for the week, even which days we would clean deeper parts of the house. Slowly, without any announcement, those decisions moved away from me. I would find things change without knowing who changed them. None of these things hurt me deeply at first. They were small, manageable, but they added up quietly, like drops of water filling a cup. And then came the bigger signs. One day, my daughter-in-law told me gently, "Ami, I made tea. You do not have to make it every morning." Another day, she said, "Ami, I will do the laundry. You should rest." Another day, "Ami, I will put the children to sleep. You don't need to worry. Rest, rest, rest." It became a word I heard often. To some people, being told to rest might feel like a kindness. But to a mother who has spent her whole life caring for others, who feels useful when she is helping, who finds meaning in her work, being asked to rest again and again begins to feel like being asked to step aside. Still, I did not want to create tension. So I smiled and said thank you. But the day she told me I was no longer needed, that day was different. It was not about cooking or laundry or tea. It was about my place in the family. And she said it so calmly that it took me a moment to understand the full meaning. "You have done enough," she said. "We can handle things now." Handle what? The kitchen? The children? The home? Or me? For a long time, I sat on my bed thinking about those words. I thought about my son, my only son. My heart wanted to believe that he still needed me, that nothing had changed between us. But even he had grown quieter lately. Not cold, not distant, just busy, always busy, coming home tired, going straight to the children, then spending long evenings with his wife in their room. He rarely sat with me the way he used to. I am not blaming him. Life becomes heavy as people grow older. Responsibilities pile up. Work gets harder. Children get louder. Time shrinks. I understood all that, but understanding does not stop the loneliness that creeps in quietly. I began to feel like a guest who had stayed a little too long. The kind of guest you love but cannot fully accommodate anymore. I did not want to admit it, even to myself. So I pushed the thought aside and focused on what I had instead of what I was losing. I still had my grandchildren. They were my joy, my little lights. They would run into my room, climb onto the bed, and talk endlessly about school, friends, cartoons. They did not care about household roles or space, or who managed what. To them, I was just Dottie. Safe, warm, familiar. But children grow too. Slowly. They needed me less as well. They began to spend more time on their tablets, more time with their parents, more time in after-school activities. Their visits to my room became shorter. Everything in my life was gently telling me the same thing. You are shifting to the side now. Not because anyone hated me. Not because anyone wanted to hurt me. But because life was moving forward, and my role in the center of it was fading. Still, I could have accepted all of this if I had felt emotionally connected to my daughter-in-law. If she had sat with me sometimes, shared small stories, laughed with me, cried with me, but we never reached that place. She kept a careful balance with me, respectful but distant, and I never pushed too hard. The afternoon she told me I was no longer needed. She said it so gently that I almost felt she was trying to protect me from something heavier. Maybe she had been wanting to say it for a long time. Maybe she felt suffocated by my presence, but did not know how to express it earlier. Maybe she needed her own space, her own rhythm, her own independence. I can understand that now. But at that moment, all I felt was the weight of being quietly replaced. That night, I lay awake for a long time, not crying, just thinking about my life, about motherhood, about how children grow and build new homes, new families, new circles, and how mothers slowly step outside those circles, not because they are unwanted, but because life has a natural way of shifting. I thought of my own mother. I remembered the time she came to stay with me after my marriage. I remembered how, after a few years, she told me she wanted to go back to her home. She did not give a reason. She simply said she wanted to live where she felt like herself. At the time, I felt hurt. I thought she did not want to be with me. But now, I understand her choice deeply. Perhaps she felt the same gentle loneliness I was feeling now. Life goes in cycles. What we once did to our elders comes back to us when we become elders. That night, I held my shawl close and listened to the distant sound of the ceiling fan. I wondered what my future would look like. Would I continue living here, quietly stepping back day by day, becoming smaller, less necessary, more of a symbol than a person? Or would I make a choice for myself before the choice was made for me? A part of me wanted to ask my son what he truly felt. I wanted to look him in the eye and say, "Do you still need me? Or am I only holding on because I'm afraid to let go?" But mothers do not ask such questions because we are afraid of the answers, because we do not want to put our children in positions where they feel torn between love and responsibility. So I kept quiet. The next morning, life continued as usual. The house was busy again. My daughter-in-law was getting the children ready for school. My son was rushing toward the door, tying his shoes. I stood in the kitchen doorway, watching them. They looked like a complete picture, a family in motion, and I was a quiet shadow in the background. I smiled. I picked up my cup of tea. I sat by the window and watched the sun rise. But something inside me was changing quietly. A slow, gentle shift. Not anger, not bitterness. Just a realization that maybe it was time to think about my own path again. To step back not because I was pushed out, but because I deserve a space where I felt valued, not only for what I did, but for who I was. I did not know then what decision I would eventually make, or how it would transform my relationship with my son and daughter-in-law. That would come later. For now, I simply held the memory of her words in my heart. "You are no longer needed." They echoed softly at first, then deeply, then clearly. And that is where the true story begins, not with pain, but with awakening.